today's video, I'm going to be talking about literally the creepiest Alice in Wonderland movie ever made because yes, there were so many adaptations, so many TV shows, movies that portrayed the Alice in Wonderland story, but this particular one from 1933, oh my goodness. This was a completely real movie that came out, but because it was so scary, a lot of parents didn't let their children watch it, and so it was forgotten over the years, and a lot of people call it the lost tapes of Alice in Wonderland. Okay, so if you've read any of the Alice in Wonderland books or you've seen any of the movies, you basically know what the whole premise is about. I feel like even if you haven't seen any Alice in Wonderland movies, you know basically what happens to her. Alice falls asleep, ends up in Wonderland, eats and drinks various things that she shouldn't. She meets a bunch of bizarre characters, she faces off with the Queen of Hearts, and then she eventually finds her way back to her cat by the end of the movie. Now, the Alice in Wonderland movie that came out in 1933 was 76 minutes long, and it was created for a very young audience, and it has all of the most famous characters like the White Rabbit, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the Mad Hatter, the March Hare. The only thing is they do not look like how you would imagine them to. You know, in most of the Alice in Wonderland movies, they have the characters looking strange but still kid-friendly, and in this particular movie, they were all created to be these monstrous things. Like every single character was designed to terrify you. There was even this one scene in the movie where the Queen of Hearts is having this giant feast, and literally the food on their plates come alive and become these like creepy food beasts and like run around. They have these faces. It is so weird. And a lot of people say that the other really creepy thing about this movie is that the actors are obviously wearing these giant weird costumes, and sometimes if the mouths of these creatures open really wide, you can see the actor's face like buried beneath the costume, and it looks like humans are trapped inside these creepy monsters. Like it literally looks like people are needing to be freed. Because kids were so afraid to see this movie, it was a flop at the box office, which really isn't surprising. And then it was also soon overshadowed by other fantasy films that became classics like The Wizard of Oz. And so like I said, this Alice in Wonderland movie soon became super forgotten. Like I even had never heard about this film until now, until I was doing research for like creepy old black and white movies. And it's so bizarre how these filmmakers didn't hold back at all in trying to make Wonderland look as sinister and uninviting as possible. And as much as like this whole thing creeps me out, I'm also really intrigued by it. Like a lot of people nowadays will go and try to watch this movie just because of how strange and unsettling it is. And they recently put this movie on DVD and Blu-ray, so guess what I bought? I bought this movie to watch on the vlog channel. It's actually coming in like 2 days, so I'm going to react to it on my other channel called Vee Vlogs. I am afraid. Now, there are a lot of adults now who look back on their childhood and remember seeing this movie, and they weren't sure if it was like a dream or not, like if this movie was actually real. A lot of adults say it was like a fever dream when they were a child. And they also say that a lot of these creepy characters stayed with them for years. Like they could not stop thinking about them. I also read a bunch of other reviews from adults who watched this movie as a kid and said it was cursed. There was this one viewer who decided to watch it at 3 a.m. with his friends at a sleepover, and apparently the power went out in his house mid-movie, but somehow the only light that stayed on in their house was their TV screen, and it was frozen on a scene of one of the creepy characters' faces, and it stayed like that all night. Like they went and got their parents, they couldn't figure out how to turn the TV off, they didn't understand why the rest of the power in their house was out. It was just so weird. So yeah, I'm gonna watch that because I am literally crazy. Now, this wasn't the only really creepy Alice in Wonderland film that ever came out. There was one that came out in 1903. It was a silent film, and it was the very first Alice in Wonderland that was ever created. It came out only a few years after the writer Lewis Carroll died, and because film technology wasn't great back then, obviously it was literally the turn of the century, they were only able to make this into a 12-minute film. But at the time, it was the longest film ever produced in Britain, and honestly, just watching these scenes is so creepy, guys. It's completely silent, and to explain a scene, they have to put the words up on the screen. Obviously, no one's talking. There's only like music playing behind all the scenes. And like, honestly, watching it, it reminds me of like an American Horror Story intro scene. You know what I mean? Now, while I was doing research for this video, I found out some really intriguing facts about Alice in Wonderland, and I found out that the writer wasn't going to call it Alice in Wonderland at first. He actually had a bunch of other titles. Like, he was gonna call it Alice's Adventures Underground, and then once that was rejected, he decided on Alice's Hour in Elfland. That was rejected. Another idea was Alice Among the Fairies, and then finally he came up with Alice in Wonderland, which I feel like is just the best one. Now, any of these adaptations, like books and movies, were actually banned in some countries when they first came out, and the reason for them being banned was because animals should not use human language. Really? I don't know why that was such a big deal. I don't know if they thought it was like teaching kids like wrong things, you know, they're not factual things. But yeah, in some countries, animals were not supposed to be able to talk. So there have been a lot of adaptations of Alice in Wonderland over the many years since the book came out. My favorite is the Disney version from the 50s. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's really good.
The animated one?
Yeah, like the classic Disney.
I might have seen it a long time ago.
I've also seen the Tim Burton one, which was okay. And I'm surprised to be even saying that because Tim Burton's like my favorite director ever, but it was just okay. I wasn't like super impressed by it. I like that Johnny Depp was in it, and it was still good, but comment down below what your favorite adaptation has been. The one we're about to watch is from 1933. Because the dogs are going crazy, Ty's just gonna grab Tumnus.
Hey, relax. I'm gonna take that pineapple, when you drop
I
it.
always do this when we turn on the vlog or when we're gonna watch a movie. It's like tradition for them. We just put in the movie. We have to use Ty's Xbox because we don't have like a regular DVD player because my goodness, it is the age of everything streaming. So we no longer watch DVDs like ever, so.
Look at all them pixels.
Now, this movie is actually black and white, so obviously they just colorized the screen here. And I'll show you guys the actual DVD. But I was surprised they had this on Amazon, and they only made this into a DVD version a few years ago, so it won't focus. Hello? It's not focusing. There we go. So that's the front. This is the back. So they've colorized it, but as you can see here, there's all the black and white scenes with the creepy egg guy, the creepy Tweedledee and Tweedledum. That's the queen.
So is Humpty Dumpty in this movie?
Apparently, and he's like one of the creepiest characters. So this movie was known to be so creepy because of the way most of the costumes and characters were designed. And there were even some scenes where you can see the human head inside of one of the creatures. So let's say like the turtle guy who's all dressed up. It's like a turtle costume. You can see the person's head like in the mouth, which really freaks people out because it looks like these creatures have swallowed humans, even though it's just the actor
I think an
inside the
exact
suit.
same thing happened to like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from
Really?
like, the 90s. When they're laughing, you can just see the teeth.
That's terrifying. You see the person's face like inside the mouth of the
Yeah.
creature. Like, no thank
Or
you.
I think like when they lean back with their mouth open, you can sometimes see like eyes in there and all that stuff.
It's gonna be creepy. We're gonna react to this for you guys. Because of copyright stuff, we can't show prolonged footage of the screen. So we'll show like quick snippets.
You're the one who spoke English longer than I did, kiddo.
Quick snippets. Snippets?
I think
What's
it's-
the word?
I think it's snippets.
Snippets. Anyway, we'll show quick bits of the movie and like screenshots and stuff, but I'm really scared. Kind of like a gloomy day. It's been raining the past couple days and we're gonna watch this creepy movie. So here we go. We need Ty to press play on his Xbox controller.
My hands are full. And it's all the way over there.
You can do it. Have Tumnus do it. Tumnus, play the movie.
Press A.
Play the movie.
Press A right there. Come on. More force, buddy. Come on.
All right, guys, it is starting. We have the opening credits with very interesting orchestra music.
Like this is really nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
Like orchestra music, but with the recording technology they had back in the time, it's so fuzzy.
Yeah.
But it's great.
All right, so she's about to go through the mirror. Ty looks very confused.
A little bit. Just seeing like the effects and whatnot and how they do
Yeah,
it.
I love how Tumnus is just watching how weird this is. Okay, so we finally met the creepy guy in the rabbit costume. She's chasing him. So I'm confused. So like chasing him to the rabbit hole that gets her to Wonderland, but she also had to use a mirror?
and she's kind of already in there.
That's what I'm wondering. She's kind of already in Wonderland because it showed everything backwards.
And the photos that were in the room originally
were of the back
was just
of people.
the back of people, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, so it's actually really cool how they're doing this, but I'm confused because it's like a double, like you have to go through a mirror and then the rabbit hole to get into like the real Wonderland.
Well, let's see how this goes.
So she's following him through the hole. She found the hole and he's following. And now she's falling.
Oh, okay.
That's a long way to fall.
Surprisingly calm about it, though. If I was in that situation, I'd just be screaming. But thank goodness there's jam on the way, apparently.
Okay, so we're approaching the strange creatures, which now we know are actors dressed up in like large fuzzy costumes.
Yeah.
So what's creepy about this is that you know this is a full-size person. It's not like a little puppet or anything. It's like the way the Teletubbies are actually like 7 feet tall.
Yeah, see, this makes me think of like that HR Puffin stuff show that we watched.
Yeah.
Because I remember mentioning that to get them to talk, because someone tells me they didn't have the tech to have it like be remote controlled.
Yeah.
So it's a guy in a suit doing this.
Yeah,
As
literally.
he's talking at the same time.
And now I'm like scared to see if I can see a face.
Because HR Puffin stuff, he had to like keep the mouth closed all the time unless they were talking.
Yeah.
So you could tell when they were running because the arms would flail everywhere because they need to keep the mouth closed. And then there's regular frogs.
Idiot froggies. Okay, so the caterpillar, I thought it was just like, you know, the top of his head there, but there's actually a human face in there as well. Look!
Yeah,
there's the human face and then the caterpillar. What? Okay, so we see the queen and she's terrifying. She's throwing a baby. Okay, guys, look at this. And she was literally just throwing the little baby around. Okay, now we're at the part of one of my favorite characters in any Alice in Wonderland, which is the Cheshire Cat. This is clearly a puppet, right?
I hope so,
It's
because if they
gotta
stuff
be.
the guy in that, it might be a bit of a challenge.
He's definitely creepy, but at least he's not like ginormous or
I like
anything.
how the tail moves. You can tell it's just like a stick.
Yeah. The Mad Hatter and March Hare that she meets at the tea party just looks normal, so we're not going to show you that. It's literally just a guy with like the top hat on and like a guy in like a rabbit costume, which is still weird, but it's not too bad. Okay, so these are some really strange characters. I have no idea who they would be because I've never seen them in like other Alice in Wonderland movies.
It is the mix between a sea turtle and a cow.
But apparently in one of these you can see the guy's face. I don't know when, but I don't know if it's gonna suddenly show it.
You can see it a little
You can
bit.
see his face inside?
Yeah, you can see it.
No. Ew. It's, wait, I think I see an eye. Ew. Okay, we have reached Tweedledee and Tweedledum, which I feel like in the movies, don't they come earlier? Like we're almost done the movie now.
I always thought they were like kind of right after the Mad Hatter's tea party. I could have been wrong though.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but these guys are definitely a look. They're definitely a look. So yeah, that's them. They're a little creepy like the rest of the characters. I think it's their mouths.
I like how it says D and dumb on them, just in case you didn't know. Printed right on the collar. I think I need that for myself, just a bean right there.
A bean.
I gotta say, I like how the tree's just looking at them in the background.
Ew, it does have eyes. What the heck? Ew. Okay guys, we have apparently reached what people say is the creepiest part. This thing is what people had nightmares about. It's Humpty Dumpty in the Alice in Wonderland world, but his mouth and his eyes, he's like a humanoid egg, literally. I'll show you.
It's just a dude's head.
It's actually terrifying.
Yeah, they just strapped some arms and legs to a
But
dude's head.
the fact that it's so realistic, like you could see his eyes moving and everything, like it's terrifying. And this is for a kid's movie. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I'd be a little scared.
I'd be terrified of
I'd be
this
a
as a
little
kid.
scared.
Okay, so now we're at the part where she's having dinner with the queen and the food starts coming alive. I mean, it's a very Alice in Wonderland thing to do. It's very strange seeing food have faces and just like dancing around and talking.
Like that.
I want to know, what is that supposed to be? Is it like a potato?
I think it's a roast,
Oh, that's the meat?
maybe?
But like, that's the type of stuff that's happening right now.
Hat.
And its arms, look at its little hands too. This has been your face the entire movie.
It's supposed to be weird.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, as we're watching this now, how was this received back in the 30s?
Not well. People were afraid.
Yeah, I can see why. The dude looks like he has a melted face when he's pretending to be a roast. That's terrifying, and this is for kids.
Yep. All right, guys, so Movie complete. Like we said, I can definitely see why kids had nightmares about this. Like, I was reading a bunch of articles online about people who are older now and like adults looking back on their childhood saying this movie definitely scarred them, and they still have the images of some of these characters like stuck in their head for all these years, which is pretty crazy, right? So interesting how they put this in DVD form, because I don't know who's buying this aside from us because we're crazy and we wanted to like react and watch it.
Collectors maybe, or people who just want to relive that childhood fear.
The trauma.
Yeah. The sweet, sweet trauma.
Anyways, it was definitely interesting to watch. I find old films to be intriguing, just a little bit scary. And today we're basically going to be continuing our series talking about the creepy origins behind your favorite Disney characters and movies. Last time we talked about Snow White, Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, Little Mermaid, all those awesome movies and old folk tales that started from some pretty creepy stuff. A lot of people don't know that Disney has taken creepy old folk tales and turned them into happy-go-lucky princess movies that we all know now. So the very first character we're going to be talking about is the Mad Hatter. So we're going to talk about the Disney version of them, and then we're going to talk about the real version of them. The Mad Hatter is a character from Disney's 1951 animated film Alice in Wonderland. He's known for his insane personality and oversized green top hat. Alice encounters him at the Mad Tea Party in Wonderland. The Hatter and his best friend the March Hare are known for throwing frequent tea parties in celebration of their unbirthdays. Everybody knows the unbirthday song, right?
A very merry unbirthday to you, to you.
I just dropped my phone. So let's go back into history all the way back to the 1800s. The term as mad as a hatter was actually used a lot back then, and for a very sad reason. It was referring to the men that used to make hats back in the day that actually lost their minds due to the chemicals they were using to make these hats. The felt hats these men were making were actually filled with mercury, which is a very, very toxic chemical. And when people were exposed too much to this chemical, their behavior would become erratic, hyper, and just overall insane. So the way they acted was actually similar to the actual Mad Hatter character in Alice in Wonderland, and that is actually where he was inspired from, which is kind of sad. I mean, these real people who were making the hats back in the 1800s really suffered. So it's just so strange going back and watching Alice in Wonderland, knowing that the Mad Hatter character came from such a horrible time. Alright, let's move on to Beauty and the Beast. The Disney film tells the story of a prince who is transformed into a beast and a young woman named Belle, whom he imprisons in his castle. To become a prince again, the beast must learn to love Belle and win her love in return before the last petal falls from the enchanted rose, or he will remain a beast forever. This is definitely one of my favorite Disney movies. I love it so, so much. So when I heard the actual dark history of this, I was not very happy. So in the original story, Belle convinces the beast to let her visit her sisters for a week, which is so strange because there's no mention of Belle's sisters in the actual movie, but in the novel, Belle does have sisters and she really wants to go see them, so the beast lets her. Now, when she goes to see them, they get really jealous because she has jewelry and she's wearing a gorgeous dress that the beast gave her. Her hair was all done and up nicely, so her sisters were like, wow, this beast is really giving you all the luxury. So they really want what Belle has. So they try to convince Belle to stay longer with the intention that her delay staying with her sisters would drive the beast mad, missing her because she wasn't coming home, and then when she actually got back, the beast would be so insane that he would devour her. So Belle's sisters were hoping the beast would eat her, all because they were jealous of her nice clothes and her jewelry, which is so, so crazy. It kind of reminds me of Cinderella and her wicked stepsisters, and I'm really glad they did not put that in the movie. Alright, let's move on to The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The plot centers on Quasimodo, the deformed bell ringer of Notre Dame, and his struggle to gain acceptance into society. He ends up standing up to his tyrant guardian in a bid to help Esmeralda, a gypsy girl, and everything sort of turns out happy, just like in all Disney movies. Well, in the original novel, Quasimodo actually isn't able to save Esmeralda and she dies. And the next part is so sad. Esmeralda is buried and Quasimodo goes to her grave where he stays there until he starves to death. So he literally does not want to leave Esmeralda's grave. He loves her that much. And years later, when Esmeralda's grave is opened, they find both their skeletons. And when they try to separate them, they turn to dust. So they were together even in death, and it's just so sad, and I'm just also glad they didn't put that in the movie. I just want to know why people were writing such sad stories back in the day. I mean, all of these fairy tales and Disney movie origins are horrible. All right, let's move on to Pinocchio. The film stars a puppet brought to life by a fairy who tries to earn his right to become a real boy as he faces the challenges and dangers of a dark, hostile world of crooks, villains, and monsters. And I mean, even in this Disney movie, if you have seen it, it is really dark already, to be honest. It is one of the darker Disney movies. Misbehaving boys are basically brought to this place called Pleasure Island, where they are transformed into donkeys and then sold into slave labor. What the heck? I remember watching this movie as a little kid at my grandma's house and thinking, oh my gosh, if I'm bad, I'm gonna turn into a donkey? So let's talk about the original story. In the old tale, Pinocchio is actually not very nice at all. He behaves badly, he steals things, and his father Geppetto actually calls him a wretched lad, which is crazy because in the Disney movie, his father loves him so much, they have like a great connection, but in the book, not so much. And you know how in the movie Jiminy Cricket like comes and helps out Pinocchio and gives him good advice? Well, in the book, when Geppetto the cricket comes to give Pinocchio advice, Pinocchio squashes him. Yeah, and then the book ends with Pinocchio actually dying. A cat and a fox kidnaps him, steals his money, and then hangs him from a tree and watches him die, which is extremely bizarre. I have heard like different endings to the Pinocchio story, so that is one of them, but like, what the heck? All right, let's move on to Peter Pan, which I have done a whole video about, so we're kind of just gonna go through this quickly. In this Disney animated film, Wendy and her two brothers are amazed when a magical boy named Peter Pan flies into their bedrooms, supposedly in pursuit of his rebellious shadow. He and his fairy friend Tinkerbell come from a far-off place called Neverland, where children stay perpetually young. Enchanted, the kids follow him back, but when Pan's nemesis, the pirate Captain Hook, causes trouble, the kids began to miss their old life. So in the old book, as you guys might have known, Peter Pan is not good at all. In fact, he's very much like a villain. He actually hates adults so much that he actually kills off the lost boys when they get older. So basically, if you're too old to be in Neverland, Peter Pan gets rid of you. It literally says in the book, when they seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out. Thins them out. What do you think that means? He gets rid of them. And in this other scene in the book, which I've also talked about before, he intentionally takes these quick, short breaths because apparently in Neverland, every time you breathe, a grown-up dies. So Peter Pan wants to like get rid of as many as possible, so breathing faster does the job. I mean, it's just so messed up. I can't even believe it. And today I'm very excited for this video because we're going to be talking about two cats in pop culture that you most likely know. I would be really surprised if you didn't. The first cat, as you can tell by today's title, is the Cheshire Cat. I want to know if I'm pronouncing it right. Is it Cheshire Cat or Cheshire Cat? I always get comments down below saying that I've pronounced something wrong, so please forgive me ahead of time. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I was a kid, I adored Alice in Wonderland, but there was always something about the scenes with the Cheshire Cat that really affected me. I think when I was really young, I even had nightmares about him, and now I kind of love his character. So we're gonna talk about some creepy things with him, some of his history. It's actually super interesting. And then we will move on to the second cat in pop culture, but I'll surprise you with that one. All right, let's discuss the Cheshire Cat. Now, we all know the Cheshire Cat is from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. If you've ever wondered what species the Cheshire Cat is in real life, it's apparently a tabby British short hair cat. And listen, I'm personally not the biggest fan of cats, cats. I'm more of a dog person, but I gotta say, these cats are pretty cute. The Cheshire Cat is a fictional character, a cat notable for its broad grin and its ability to disappear and reappear at will. When you hear Cheshire Cat, what's the first thing that you think of? Because I know for me, it has always been his big smile. The Cheshire Cat is the cat of the Duchess. Alice first meets it in chapter 6 from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. When she leaves the Duchess and finds it in a tree, it constantly grins and can disappear and reappear. Sometimes it disappears and leaves its grin behind. I know when I was younger watching Alice in Wonderland, the fact that the cat could disappear, I almost wondered if maybe it was all in Alice's head, like maybe it wasn't actually there, maybe she was kind of going insane after being in Wonderland. The Cheshire Cat is the only character in Wonderland who actually listens to Alice. With his remarks, he teaches Alice the rules of Wonderland. He gives her insight in how things work down there. I know this is totally random, but if you listen to the Cheshire Cat's voice, he sounds just like the voice of Winnie the Pooh.
A Cheshire Cat. I improve my appetite.
Is that actually the case? Because if that's the case, that is so crazy how he plays such opposite characters, because Winnie the Pooh is so lovable and sweet and funny, and the Cheshire Cat is like mysterious and creepy. So let's start with how the Cheshire Cat got his name. If you go way back in history, there was a common saying that was to grin like a Cheshire Cat. So if somebody was smiling really wide, someone would be like, oh, you're grinning like a Cheshire Cat. It was just like a super common phrase back then. So maybe he liked that saying and wanted to make an actual character out of it. Now, he also could have got his inspiration from cheese, which I know sounds really weird. But a long time ago in England, in the county of Cheshire, they were known for their dairy production, particularly their cheese. They would have a practice of producing cheeses into the shape of a grinning cat. And that's how they would like sell and market their cheeses. They would shape it into a grinning cat and people would be so intrigued by them. And the last possible inspiration that he could have gotten for the Cheshire Cat is the carving at St. Wilfrid's Church. There's a church that has stood since the 12th century where Carell's father used to preach. A carving of a grinning cat peeks out from above the church's main entrance. So when Carell was a little boy and went to that church almost every single week, that image of the cat might have like been put into his brain, and that's why he wanted to make a character out of it. So there's so many different reasons from his life that he could have made this character, but it has been said to be one of the creepiest Disney characters ever made. And when the movie Alice in Wonderland first came out, it was a subject of kids' fears. I know I have some friends in real life that when they were little, they just couldn't watch the movie because that part really scared them. And now I just think he's so cool. Now, there is a Mandela effect that I quickly want to mention that does blow my mind. So everyone knows the famous line from the Cheshire Cat. What we all believe is that he says, "We're all mad here." And think about it, there's so much merch with that saying on it. People have gotten tattoos with that saying. "We're all mad here" has become like the quote from the movie. But if you go back and watch the movie, he never said that. His exact words were, "Most everyone is mad here." So he doesn't say "we're all mad here," he says "most everyone." What? So people are currently freaking out about this on the internet. They don't know how they got it so messed up. And guys, that is why Mandela effects really freak me out. So let me know down below what you remembered. Okay, so let's move on to the next cat in pop culture. It is Garfield. If you don't know what Garfield is, come on! He is like the most popular comic book cat ever. Not comic book. Comic strip. Jim Davis's first Garfield comic strip debuted on June 19th, 1978 in 41 newspapers. The antics of a cranky, overweight orange cat quickly drew fans. Part of the comic strip's success may be that it's so apolitical. It talks about loving food and naps and hating work and Mondays. It's the exact opposite of a New Yorker cartoon. So people instantly fell in love with the Garfield comics because people had never seen anything like it before. So So we have a list of what Garfield likes. It says lasagna, sweet foods, naps, climbing trees, and Pookie the teddy bear. So like I said, everything about Garfield people just found relatable. So let's move on to the darker parts of Garfield. There was this one comic strip that was released that was super strange. Usually Garfield comics were really funny and uplifting and people would laugh hysterically, but one day he came out with a Garfield comic that was dark and almost depressing, and it made you just feel strange after reading it. So we're gonna look through that comic strip together. This came out on October 23rd, 1989, so it's pretty old. This is how it starts. Brr, there's a chill in here this morning. What an eerie sensation. This doesn't feel like home. John? Odie? Anybody home? I'm alone. You have no idea how alone you are, Garfield. What the heck was that? Oh, there was like a growl noise behind my backdrop. That's so scary. Woo, I'm calm, I'm calm, I'm calm. Let's continue this. Of course this would happen during a creepy video. Steady, Garfield. There must be a good reason why the house is empty. John must be at the grocery. And then it shows the outside of his house and it says for sale. My home has been abandoned. No one lived here for years. But that means I haven't lived here for years. What's that? John, Opie, you're home. Hello, Garfield. Have some food. Locked fast within a time when he no longer exists, Garfield grapples with his greatest fear, loneliness. What does this even mean? Like, people who read this were like, what? It doesn't fully make sense. It leaves you with a weird feeling. People were just wondering why this was made. Before we get going, I just want to show you creepy Garfield. Woo! So there have been people on the internet who have taken our lovely Garfield and turned him into something creepier. This creepy Garfield is known as I Am Sorry, John. It's a series of Garfield-inspired artwork in which Garfield is depicted as a horror creature stalking his owner, John. A lot of these drawings were created by a horror artist by the name of William Burke. So let's go through some of these very creepy drawings. First we have John, where is my lasagna? And he's like this creepy spider figure, ew! And poor John is like hiding behind a wall like, please don't find me. Then we have John, I can smell you. And he's like this bug monster thing, ugh. And John once again is hiding behind like a desk or something. Then we have the world is gonna end, John. And he's this tall, creepy cat with a long tongue. So yeah, poor John in all of these. Ty! My heart, my heart, my heart. Oh my goodness. My heart is beating so much. Okay, I just looked behind my backdrop and a box fell off of my shelf. Don't know how. My heart is beating so fast right now. So I'm gonna end the video. Oh my goodness, it's so crazy that that was all caught on camera. Okay. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your comments on the Cheshire Cat and Garfield down below. I hope you have a better day than I just am having right now. And today my shirt says, normal people scare me because true. I saw this shirt online and right away I was like, pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? Today we're gonna be talking about creepy places that people found in real life. These are true stories. They found these very eerie, strange places, and the next day when they went back to show somebody, it was gone. So these are places that technically should not exist and may not exist. What if you passed an old-fashioned diner or motel on the road, only to stop by on your return trip to find it completely gone? And like I said, it turns out these occurrences actually happen. Some people love exploring and finding creepy places, but they rarely expect their discoveries to vanish entirely without explanation. So these are some true stories of people that happened to. The first one is called Free Ghost Pizza. There was this guy who was staying at a friend's place in in New York City. They were out of town, so he was babysitting their cat. At some point in the night, he realized he had not eaten dinner, he was super hungry and wanted to find somewhere to grab some food. Hurricane Sandy had recently come through, so many shops and restaurants were still closed in recovery mode. So he was walking around and was not able to find anything. So he started to walk back to the apartment to just order some delivery. When he walked by this random place, this woman was standing outside the door and she said to him, "Free pizza?" Now, he was not one to ever turn away from those words, so he turned to her and she repeated the phrase while opening the door to the small pizzeria. He ended up getting 2 large slices and headed back home for the night, stopping to give one of those slices to the doorman of the complex. The next day, he walked all down New York City and was not able to find any trace of this pizzeria that he had been to. So to this day, he calls this his ghost pizza story. How crazy is that? He went to the exact same street in New York City where this place was supposed to be, and it was gone. Next, we have a story called Follow the White Rabbit. This story is about a girl whose grandparents had a big farm when she was growing up, and all of the grandkids would help out there over the summer when they were out of school. And anytime they saw a rabbit, they were supposed to grab it so that it didn't eat any of the vegetables. So this girl was about 12 years old at the time, and one day she saw a white rabbit in the beans eating all of them. She did not want her grandfather to see it because he usually grabbed them. Sometimes it was not a good end for them. So she tried to chase it off instead. She ended up following it into the bushes, and for whatever reason, she just kept following it into the woods. She ran after it for a while until she found what was clearly an old, creepy barn ruin. Now, barn ruins were pretty normal to see in areas like the country that they were in, so she decided to go inside it. It was weirdly kept up really well with antique tools in great shape and also fresh hay. So she started to worry that maybe she had wandered into her neighbor's property. So when she got back, she asked her grandfather about it, and he said that there weren't any abandoned barns for miles, and he had no idea what she was talking about. So he followed her out there, and she was not able to find it ever again. So the rest of her life, it just drove her crazy as to where that old creepy barn went. Now, there's another story called The Endless Hole, and it also involves a white rabbit. There was this other story about a girl who lived out in the country. One day she was out feeding her horses when she saw a white rabbit staring at her in the distance. It had these bright red eyes that almost glowed even in the daylight, and she felt compelled to follow it. But as she approached it, it started to run away. But because she was so curious, she continued to chase it. It took her to a giant hole in the ground and quickly scurried inside. The hole was probably 6 feet wide and was so dark that she had no idea how deep it could have gone. But what she'll never forget is as she stood there, she heard a deep whispering voice coming from the hole that said,
"Would you like to come in? We're waiting for you."
She was so startled that she ran back home to tell her father. When she brought him back to the exact spot she found it, it was nowhere to be seen. Imagine hearing a creepy voice coming from a hole in the ground? No thank you. But this story kind of reminds me of like the rabbit hole to Wonderland, right? I guess you should just never follow white rabbits. So next we have a story called The Uneasy Feeling in a Cave. This is about a guy who was on a hiking trail that he went on very frequently. It was along the side of the Niagara Escarpment, so it had some climbable cliffs and some very shallow caves that you can crawl around on. He was with some friends when he was about 19 years old, and they found a cave that went pretty deep. Now, they had never been in there before and had never seen it before, so out of curiosity, they decided to check it out even though they had no flashlights at all. And this was also back when cell phones didn't have a flashlight function on them. They stepped into the cave and it was easily 20 to 30 degrees cooler on the inside. They started looking around and it seemed like a very clean cave. It didn't have beer cans all over the ground like the other ones did. It didn't have any graffiti on the walls. It looked crystal clear and actually perfect, like no one had ever found it before. While they were all standing in there, they suddenly got this very eerie feeling. They started hearing voices and things started poking them on the shoulder and on the back, and they weren't able to figure out who or what it was because it was pitch dark. So they ran out of there within a few minutes and decided to come back the next day with flashlights. Well, as they exited the cave, they realized that 4 hours had gone by, even though they only felt like they were in there for 10 minutes. So the next day they went back with the flashlights and were no longer able to find the cave. And since that happened, no one believes it. So that sucks. Imagine finding something and the next day you're not able to find it again. I would feel crazy. And lastly, we have a story called The Tunnel. This guy told a story about when he was 7 years old. He rode his bike into a tunnel under a 2-lane road, and when he emerged, he was in the desert. The path was still there, but it went straight off into the desert. There were a few cactus plants and it was hot and sunny, so he got freaked out and turned around and went back through the tunnel, and he emerged into his own hometown park, where it was late afternoon, there was trees, it was November, and he looked back through the tunnel again, and there was no longer a desert, it was just the rest of the normal road. How weird is that? Now, I know this was a young kid and kids have very imaginative imaginations, but it's a pretty creepy thing that could happen to somebody. And in today's video, I'm going to be telling you guys about 2 very creepy tales of tea parties. Tea parties that you never want to attend. So the first story is called The Invitation. There's an unfortunate story about a teenage girl that got a strange invitation in the mail. It was sealed with wax and looked dated and old. It also had the scent of must. So she brought it inside and showed everybody in her family. And she asked them if they knew where it was from, but everyone was just as confused as she was. She opened it up to see that it was an invitation to a tea party, but it didn't say whose. It gave an address, a time, and a dress code. But the creepiest part was that at the bottom it said, "No +1s allowed. Please arrive unattended." Which, I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of sketchy. The invitation looked like it was written in gold, and the girl was mesmerized and so intrigued by it. Her family warned her not to go and made her promise that she would throw out the invitation right away. But the next day when her parents went into her bedroom, she was nowhere to be seen. And they found the invitation lying open on her bed, and their hearts sunk when they knew where she had gone. Now, after this, she was never seen again. And when her family went to the address the tea party was said to be at, they arrived at an old abandoned building. It was then found out that multiple people had gone missing after receiving this mysterious tea party invitation. And there's actually this legend that goes along with the story that is really eerie. It says that if you take an empty invitation and put it in your mailbox, the creepy tea party invite will be in the envelope. Now, some people think that maybe this girl was taken to a much better place. Like maybe she wasn't harmed or in any danger, but somewhere better. But other people think that no, this is not a place you ever want to go. So maybe I'll try this invitation game over on my vlog channel. Do I really want to go to this tea party? I don't know. Alright, this next tale is called The Tea Party, and it's by a user called Nocturnal Nanny. Now, this is only a summary of the story that I'm going to be telling you today. It's much longer and more detailed, so if you want to go read it for yourself, definitely go check it out. But it's about this girl named Bree that loved having tea parties in her room every single Sunday afternoon. Now, she just lived with her father, so every single Sunday she would invite him to come to her tea party. Now, he always told her that she was allowed to invite her friends over for tea, but instead she only ever invited over her imaginary friend named Natalie. So her father walked into her bedroom and saw that there were 3 little chairs sitting around a table. One for Bree, one for the father, and one for Natalie. Bree began pouring tea into everyone's cups, and Natalie's cup was purple because apparently that was her favorite color.
You should say hi to Natalie. It's rude to ignore her,
Bree said to her father. So he just went along with it and greeted her invisible friend, smiling at the empty chair where she sat. Now, he assumed that most kids her age probably had imaginary friends, but what was strange was that Bree had a whole strange backstory about Natalie. She said that Natalie had grown up in a foster home her whole life, never having been able to stay longer than a few months at a time. She has a lazy eye and no one likes her because she's scary looking, and now she lives under the neighbor's basement. Now, it made him very uneasy when he heard that part. He couldn't understand why she would make up such a tragic tale. As he sat there, he watched his daughter speak enthusiastically to her friend, and then she poured everyone another round of juice. So he took a mental note that she would probably need to use the bathroom soon. He then excused himself to go downstairs to get Bree some cheese and crackers. And on his way downstairs, he heard the bathroom door slam shut. It was a father's instinct. He knew she'd have to go. He returned shortly after and asked his daughter if she remembered to wash her hands. But she shook her head and said,
Natalie went to the washroom, not me. But yeah, she washed her hands.
Once they were finished with their tea and crackers, Bree announced that Natalie had to go home now. And holding the air in her hand, her father watched her walk Natalie to the front door and hugged her goodbye. Once she was satisfied that her friend had left, Bree turned around and ran back to her playroom, announcing that she was going to color her a picture for next time. So the father made his way to the kitchen when he suddenly heard the doorbell ring. And as he opened the door, he found his front porch empty. And just before he could close the door again, he heard Bree yell down at him from the other room.
Natalie said she forgot her bracelet in my room. Can you grab it for her, Daddy?
So trying to play along, he walked back into her room and glanced down at the purple teacup and realized there was a bracelet inside. His hands began to shake as he picked it up. He slowly turned it over and saw the name Natalie delicately written on the inside. And that is how the story ends. So here's the theory that people have. The neighbors kidnapped a little girl and hid her under the floorboards of the basement after she passed. So obviously that means that Bree would be having tea parties with this girl's ghost, which is horrifying. I always find imaginary friend stories to be really eerie and just scary because a lot of the times it makes you wonder, is this just in someone's head or is it actually a ghost? Because people say that pets and little kids have that like ability to see stuff like that adults would never be able to see. So yeah, it just really creeps me out.